Hey friends! I got a really good start on this painting here, but honestly, it's looking a bit drab so far, right? It's got a solid drawing, some okay values, but we can do better. So let's try a few things to make this piece absolutely dripping in mood. Taking it from here to here. Let's get started. So first step is, let's define what mood is. Mood in art, rather, is defined by the emotions that are elicited in the viewer of a piece of artwork intentionally or unintentionally. So that's a little cut and dry. Why don't we go back and explore that a little bit and how I developed this piece. I went ahead and, got me some reference photos that I definitely don't want to show here unless I want to get copyright struck. So we're just gonna leave those as is. And I'm gonna get started on the thumbnailing process. Thumbnailing is definitely an area I'm still pretty weak in, so forgive me for not recording this part. But these are some stills from what I did do for this picture. Just working out the overall composition, where I'm gonna place the head, the pose. And it was at this point in the drawing that I really decided on some critical pieces to add to the mood of the overall illustration. Specifically those gothic and mysterious feeling. In particular with the high arch, the cracked glass in the background, and just some of the color choices I ended up making, the clouds, some hints at what the atmosphere might be and what the lighting might be. We're gonna zip right to the finished drawing because honestly, you don't really need to see that to get the idea of mood for this painting. If you really want to check that out, it'll be in this description sometime in the near future. One of the best ways you can improve on a mood is to really well define your background. This is something I should have done way earlier, and it's something I'm working on. I really went out of my way to not rush. And not rushing is a really important skill. Like, we feel so pressured to get things done that get posted on social media, to just move on to the next thing, when we really should savor our art, to really get a feel for what we're making and make the decisions with care and rationally. Honestly, the part that I think really sells it the most in this is the broken glass. Like, I was so pleased with figuring out to use a dark layer multiplied against the background and then painting over highlights on top of that. I just think it really sells the idea that it's glass and not just some transparent thing that's not glass. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say, for sure. I definitely took multiple breaks doing this painting. The actual time was several days with a couple 2 or 3 hours on each session, but I realized somewhere around the second or third day, when I was pretty far along with rendering, that the character didn't really feel like it was part of the scene. And part of that was because there's nothing in the foreground. So double duty, making it a more moody piece and making it feel more unified, which itself is an important part of mood, and just the concept of the elements of design, where things like repetition, balance, line, shape, all important aspects come into place to make a good composition. All right, and one of the final ways I made big improvements on the overall mood of the piece was to really play with the colors, mostly through overlays. The reason I did this was because you can get a pretty good idea of how you need to render it in terms of value with analyzing where your light sources are coming from and just applying it to the surfaces. Skin is going to look like skin regardless of what mood you're going for the most part. So I usually leave a lot of the final tweaks for setting the mood for last. It's just a preference of mine. Not really a right or wrong way. It's probably better to start working at it sooner, but some of the decision making I made with this piece did not happen till later. The main tool I used to unify the foreground, background, midground was called a gradient map. Now what a gradient map does is it just takes all the raw values and applies a hue to it. And it's a really cool tool in Photoshop to use to bring some unity to a piece, especially if there's a lot of different things that are very differently colored. But it is one of my favorite tricks to achieving a more unified appearance. Once I was pretty satisfied with where the colors were, some of the last things I did to make this piece feel more moody was to just create a couple of filter effects. I, for example, blurred out the background significantly just to make it look like she was being photographed and that the little dust in the background was being blown out with bokeh. I also did a bit of a sharpening filter just to make the lines formed by the edges of the values a little more contrasty and stand out a bit. I just really like that aesthetic. Same thing with the canvas textures I add at the end. It's mostly just my preference for things to not look excessively digital, and that's why I leave a lot of the brush work, the line work in, just to give it that more organic look instead of being super smooth and perfect. Honestly, thank you for making it so far. If you liked it, please like this video. I have a whole bunch more kind of similar to this on my channel. We're still making new stuff all the time. So if you want to, go ahead and check out whatever just popped up here and maybe comment about the things you would like to see in future videos. Or if you have any questions for me about whatever I discussed today, I'm always happy to help, and I hope I see you next time.